Each week, nearly a dozen movies are released theatrically. 40 films a month, more than 400 a year. That's a plethora of cinema. Too much cinema. You'd have to be an addict to see all that, but don't fret. We've got you covered. This is CinemAddicts.
Hey everyone, what's up? It's another week of CinemAddicts, a bunch of new episodes. Well, actually, 2 new episodes in a way. This is episode number 205, I believe, for CinemAddicts. We just finished our latest Patreon episode, which we covered 2 films. Eric Holmes, joined by Eric Holmes and Bruce Purkey. Eric Holmes, can you mention what movies we covered recently? We recorded on Patreon.
Yeah, we talked about Trash Humpers and MacGruber. And also Experiment in Terror came up at the very, very, very end. And that was fun too. So watch that movie.
And that is a great free recommendation, non-Patreon recommendation to the populace, the Commonwealth. Yes, Experiment in Terror, I believe, was either released in 64 65, stars Lee Remick. I have not seen it. I remember Eric Holmes recommended it to us over our CinemAddicts Facebook group a couple years ago. That was when we talked about the passing of Blake Edwards. Yes, for a catch-all $5 per month, you can join us on our CinemAddicts Patreon for our bonus episodes, some spoiler talk, a lot of different things for our CinemAddicts. Okay, so that's very, very good. Bruce, do you remember what year we are covering for our bonus episode of September? What year are we doing?
1998, I do believe.
1998. Do you remember anything from the year? Where were you in the year 1998? I know probably Eric Holmes was just a little bit of a pop. What do you remember your 1998 years?
I was living in Seattle, north of Seattle somewhere, and watching lots of movies. But I kind of a blur, like which movies came out in 98 versus 99. I mean,
That's true.
I don't know.
I was living in Culver City, California, which was home of Sony Pictures. I lived just a block and a half away from where they shot Gone with the Wind. Eric and Bruce did not know that about me, but again, I did the mandate no personal stuff from CinemAddicts, and I apologize to Bruce and Eric and to you listeners for our personal stuff. Any personal stuff we want to get out of the way, Bruce or Eric, before we get into our movies? Anything right off the top?
I got an interview coming up. We'll talk more about that next week because we'll be covering one of the movies next week.
Okay, very, very good. Maybe we'll allude to that towards the end of the program. Bruce, any kind of...
I'll use my allotted time to tease the Patreon. So all you poor people who have not paid to be in the Patreon, oh my God, you're missing so many hot takes by Eric. Oh my gosh, you don't even know. You should hear what he says. You should hear what he says is the best movie by Francis Ford Coppola.
I might even tease Bruce. I might actually break our law on CinemAddicts by actually releasing that little snippet from Eric Holmes as sort of a tease for our Patreon. Maybe people can actually join our Patreon for a month just to get at Eric Holmes for his hot take on FFC, Francis Ford Coppola's films. But there's no Coppola this week. There's no Blake Edwards. There are 3 films that we're covering. This movie, a documentary called Mr. Jimmy. It centers on a Japanese musician who really wants to become Jimmy Page. And that's a very interesting documentary that me and Bruce got to check out. Me, Bruce, and Eric were covering the 2 films, Nandor Fodor and the Talking Mongoose, and a movie called The Good Mother. Okay, so those are our 3 movies this week that we're spotlighting on CinemAddicts. Before we dive in, any kind of quippy things right off the beaten path, stuff, Eric Holmes, that you wanted to mention before we just dive right into these movies?
No, I think we got it.
You got it. Korean cinema? You want to say something about Korean cinema? Have you been in a Korean state of mind the last several days?
Oh yeah, that actually would be some. So the Subway Cinemas is always doing these things in New York to film festival type things. Always kind of putting Asian cinema forward, and I believe it's the 1st to the 17th. They are doing Korean cinema golden age, the 1960s. And I got to watch one of them. It's got a couple names. Oh, it's a Blood-Sucking Killers. That one was a really, really strange movie, but really good. And there's like a whole list of other ones that I need to get through eventually.
Are you excited to actually get through them?
Yeah, because I really love Korean cinema from like the 2000s on, and so the 60s in Korean cinema is just complete blind spot for me. And so this is the second time I interviewed Goran Topalovic, I interviewed him before with they were doing it for the Wuxia movies, and that opened up a whole door. So I think, as much as I love Korean cinema, 1960s Korean cinema is not anything I know anything about. So yeah, pretty much anytime Goran comes on, I know that I'm going to learn more and open up a new cabinet of goodies, cinematic goodies.
Well, hopefully next week, if you have the time, Eric, maybe see a couple more of these Korean films and tell us what you think of this Korean cinema from that golden age and why it was a golden age period for cinema. And also that those interviews will be up. I'll post a link on where Eric's interview with Goran Topolovic. I apologize, Topolovic. It'll be out later via our Find Your Film podcast later this month. Later this week. I apologize. Okay, so the first movie is Nandor Fodor. Yes, Nandor Fodor and the Talking Mongoose.
I am Dr. Nandor Fodor.
The world's foremost parapsychologist.
I am not a skeptic.
This is the strangest case I have ever encountered.
A family living in a farmhouse claim a talking mongoose lives in their barn. Creature's name is Jeff.
What do you think about it?
A talking mongoose.
The Irving family are peculiar.
Did you observe this creature?
No.
No.
I did hear it.
We are going to the Isle of Man.
I have almost 20 years of research in this field.
You're here to see Jeff. Is the creature here? Well, because we can't see him, doesn't mean he ain't here.
I see.
The daughter is a ventriloquist.
Dr. Fodor has a tremendous skepticism indeed.
This is an inexplicable farce.
You'd say the wee rascal's probably watching us right now.
Everybody on this island has their Jeff story. Tell me yours.
You and I both know there ain't no Jeff.
Early state, clear state. Can you tell him to come out so we can see him? Is that him there?
What is the Irving's motive? It strikes me as con artists.
We hear with our eyes as much as we do our ears.
These people are lying.
I think he exists. I'm certain of it.
Just show yourself. I mean you no harm. Please. Jeff! Just show me that you're real.
Dr. Fodor, here's a call for you. It's from him.
Hello?
Tomorrow I shall let you see me.
What a ridiculous title. I can't even pronounce Nandor Fodor. Here's the thing. It's not as silly as you think because Nandor Fodor is an actual parapsychologist who actually existed in this world we know as Earth. So this is sort of, in a weird way, based on a true story or based on real events. It centers on how in 1935, Dr. Nandor Fodor, played by Simon Pegg, he is investigating this claim that there is a talking mongoose who lives among a family. They're called the Irvings, and the wife is just a really seemingly the perfect mom. She cooks really cool raspberry tarts and desserts, and the father is just maybe overly friendly. Their daughter has ventriloquist powers. She is a talent. She can throw her voice around. Most importantly, though, is there really a talking mongoose living amongst them and in the village where Nandor Fodor decides to investigate. Minnie Driver is also in this movie as Anne, the assistant to Nandor Fodor, and also Christopher Lloyd. He plays this fellow parapsychologist. I think his name is Harry Price. And what's interesting is even though Harry Price is seemingly a minor character in this film because he's the one who actually discovered this assertion of the talking mongoose and he throws over that job to Nandor Fodor, Christopher Lloyd actually provides a pretty solid VO in the first act, and he spends a couple of interesting back and forths with Simon Pegg in the movie at the beginning and at the end. It's 96 minutes, rated PG-13, directed and written by Adam Siegel. I ascribed a lot of value to this movie. It's just a weird film. I feel like maybe I put a little bit too much of my personal thoughts on maybe faith and religion or myth, and I thought it was a little bit resonant. I don't know. I think I feel I was a bit crazy for really enjoying this movie. Bruce, am I going outside the bounds of actually enjoying this film? How did you feel about this?
Yes, you are. You are going outside the bounds.
Yeah.
No, you're not. It's not. It's fine. Well, I feel like this is a very curious film, and I have a real hard time pinning down exactly what it's doing. First of all, I definitely have a hard time pinning down whatever accent Simon Pegg is doing. I don't have any clue what that is.
Christoph Waltz.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't quite work for me. But that being aside, so it's based, like you said, it's based on a real story. It's based on actual events that happened in this village and actual accounts of this talking mongoose that no one could ever quite see, but they all claimed was there and real. And okay, how to get about this? This movie feels like it wants to be whimsical. And the music is always telling me it's musical. It's whimsical. The music, the score is always kind of in that mode, or a lot of the time it's in that mode. But the movie itself isn't really that whimsical. It has moments, but it's I think it's trying to be a little more philosophical to some degree.
Like very deep. Like
sort of. I think it's kind of dangerously deep, honestly. In an era where believing it's fine if people believe things that aren't actually true and that's not a problem. That kind of the message of this movie kind of is kind of saying like, if people want to believe stuff that's just not true, that's great. What's the harm? Really, there's a lot of harm in that right now. I think you can see throughout the world. But that's kind of, once again, that's me ascribing the real world onto this movie, which doesn't really apply either.
No, it applies though, because I think this movie engages the audience to give their interpretation. So I think your take is valid.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I think the movie is okay. I think what it wants to do is it wants to be this kind of this discussion between the scientific method and faith, and whether like where the validity lies between those two things, or does it lie in both places, or can both places can they coexist in the same world? That's what it's kind of, I think, getting at, right? But the problem I had with this movie is that, to me, it's so plainly clear where the reality lies. Like the evidence is preponderance of evidence that it lies in a certain direction. And I'll leave it at that because people can watch the movie and decide for themselves. But I think it's very, very, very obvious where it lies, which makes me not understand exactly the point of the movie. And the other problem I kind of have with the movie, and I don't hate this movie, I had a fine time watching it, but it's very mild-mannered. I think this movie needs to have a little more something. It needs to have a little more bite in some direction. Either it has to be a little more truly whimsical or a little more serious. Like take this really preposterous idea and make it super serious. I don't know. It's whatever it is, it doesn't quite go in a direction. And I think that's
middle
kind
road.
Of that's kind of my problem is I feel like it's kind of too wishy-washy. Like I said, I don't hate it, but I didn't love it. I'm going to give it an extra half star just for the post-credit sequences that occur because I kind of loved that. And honestly,
stay for the end credits.
The sense of humor and self-deprecation that's available there made me think like, why did this person make this movie? I don't understand. Maybe it's the script has nothing to do with the person. I don't know.
Because
I feel like
an asshole. Because he's an asshole.
I feel like there could have been a lot more of that personality thrown into this movie, and I think it would have been a better movie. But I understand that a director is not the whole voice of a movie necessarily. So yeah, I'm kind of right in the middle on this one.
Well, Eric, Bruce said use a word wishy-washy. Did you feel that this movie was wishy-washy as well? Where did you stand on this film?
I don't, but I kind of see where Bruce is coming from. My thoughts on it. First, this movie played a lot like a murder mystery, but there's not a murder, but there's definitely like a mystery element to it. Is this talking mongoose Jeff? Is this real? Is it not? And I think it becomes pretty clear that the whole thing's a hoax. But what I liked what the movie did, and I think where Bruce might be kind of button up against is Nando Fodor. His character is a skeptic. He doesn't believe any of this. The stuff that's presented is done in such a way that it's like, oh, this is clearly a hoax. Like, why does anyone believe this? And I think as it goes on, it kind of I kind of saw how someone could get there. And so like this would be like something if you see yourself in the movie, oh, that's where I'm doing this thing in real life. Maybe I can kind of put a pin in that and recognize it when it comes and I start falling for that. That's kind of where I was going with this. As far as the whimsy stuff, I think, yeah, I suppose, but mostly I got the murder mystery vibe without the murder. So I'm not familiar with. I'm familiar now with who Nando Fodor is, but I wasn't at the time. And then I looked him up. It's like parapsychologist, investigator, and then I was like reading more about him. And I was like, oh, he's kind of like James Randi, like where James Randi would go around and he does like the mentalism and magic tricks and stuff, but he does it with full, given full knowledge that this is a trick. And then when other people come and try to say, no, I really talk with the dead. And it's like, oh, do you? All right, well, oh, you really have mental powers? Okay, display them. But you have to do them, on my terms. Otherwise, you've proved nothing to me. And that's kind of what I think Nando Fodor is. They don't. Also, I guess to Bruce's point, they don't really dig deep into that aspect of it, although there's a bit of it in there. I would have liked to see him kind of go more into that. And to tell you the truth, I'd like to see more movies like this kind of go deep. Like, it'd be cool to see a movie about James Randi, but kind of done in the same way where they can, but like kind of go a little harder into the skepticism of it.
Well, I enjoyed this movie. It's one of these things where I agree, actually, Bruce, with your assessment of this film. It's like pineapple pizza. There's a lot of people who won't really just understand pineapple pizza. I'm not saying you don't understand it, but it's just a weird mix. And I really loved how this movie was that weird mix, and it straddled that balance. It was weird. I ended up really enjoying this film. I don't know how the mass will feel about Nando Fodor and the Talking Mongoose. Let's start off with ratings for this film. Eric Holmes, what rating do you give it?
Right now, probably a 4.5, just because I wish they would have went a little harder in the skepticism. But I mean, it could also climb because I really enjoyed this quite a bit.
4.5. Okay, and you loved it the most because of it's a 4.5 because of why, Eric? Just because what it's trying to approach.
I like the mystery of it. I like the characters. I even like Simon Pegg's weird accent, whatever that was. Neil
Driver was good. Oh,
Neil Gaiman as the voice of Jeff. Mm-hmm. Loved that because Neil Gaiman was doing the narration at the beginning. I was like, oh, I love this narration. The guy sounds a lot like Neil Gaiman, and then the credits came up Neil Gaiman. I'm like, oh well, there it is. But yeah, I think if they would have went harder in the skepticism, this could have been a 6.9 star. But as it is, 4.5, and I would definitely watch it again for sure.
Did you like Christopher Lloyd?
Oh yeah, Christopher Lloyd's great.
Christopher Lloyd was great at this. So,
and
yes.
Crap, Minnie Driver.
Yes,
love Minnie
Driver was really good.
She was so good. It's not a role that she usually plays. A very subtle, reserved woman in this movie, and she's very good in this movie. So yeah, I'm giving it 4 stars, 4.5 for Eric. What is your rating, Bruce?
I'll be 3 stars.
3 stars. That's a mild recommend. That's nothing wrong with that.
We're good enough time with it. Yeah.
Good enough time. Nando Fodor and the Talking Mongoose hits theaters September 1st. Tell us what you think of this film. Eric Holmes is going to take a little bit of a break. I'm going to bestow a little bit of a break for you, Eric Holmes, because Bruce and I, oh, there you go. He's hanging right next to his Blue Ruin poster. He's just chilling. There's a movie it comes out. It's documentary September 1st. It was actually made in 2019, so it's 4 years since. But maybe because of COVID and whatnot, it's taken a while. I was encouraging Bruce Purkey to continue to watch this documentary called Mr. Jimmy, and it's about this Japanese guy, average Joe, but he's not so average. His name is Aiko Sakurai, and his thing is he actually wants to become Jimmy Page. He knows he's not going to transform into Jimmy Page, but the way to become Jimmy Page, or quote unquote Mr. Jimmy, is to immerse themselves into the musical stylings of Jimmy Page, like literally parrot and riff off, or note by note, strum by strum, copy Page's stylings from different concerts during his Led Zeppelin years. So if you are a fan of Led Zeppelin, you might become a fan of Aiko Sakurai as well. Who knows? This movie could be for you. Eric Holmes, Bruce Purkey just left the room for a second. Are you a fan of Led Zeppelin at all, or Jimmy Page or Robert Plant, of that music?
Yeah, they're not like a top 10 band for me, but I do dig them. When the Levee Breaks, a good song. John Bonham's a great drummer. I mean, everyone says that, but like me and my friends jam out like once a month, and they always want to do a Led Zeppelin song. And I thought for the longest time, it's like, I don't get it. The beats he's playing so simple, until I started trying to play them. I'm like, oh, I underrated him quite severely, because his drum lines are really inventive. But as far as Jimmy Page, yeah, not a fan, not a fan, just kind of
neutral.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, whether you're a fan or not, it's hard to dispute Jimmy Page's contributions to music. And I think for me, Mr. Jimmy really spotlights how Jimmy Page is a great, great musician, as seen through the eyes of Aiko Sakurai. When he was a teenager, Akio Sakurai, he was really entranced by Jimmy Page. And what's interesting about this documentary is now Sakurai is he's middle aged now, and for over 30 years he has been trying to become. He's been Mr. Jimmy. He has continued to have that passion for Jimmy Page over the years. I found it to be a very interesting documentary. I liked his entire journey. It traces about maybe 6 or 7 years of his life as Mr. Jimmy. Bruce, your thoughts on this documentary?
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in here. I would say this will vary a little bit on your love or not love of Led Zeppelin, because there's a lot of him playing. So I think that if there's any knock against it, it probably could be trimmed down for some of that, and then maybe leave more of that on like a Blu-ray release or something, so people can really watch more of the performances, because there's a lot of him playing. But if you like that stuff, I mean, value added for sure. I think that where this really shines is just the level of obsessiveness that he puts to it. So for example, and I might have missed some of the stuff he said. I had to run out of the room for a second. Sorry.
No.
He'll do things like, well, I want this amp, because this amp that he used is what he sounded like in 1973, and this performance I'm going to be 1973 Jimmy Page, but then tomorrow I'm going to be 1971 Jimmy Page, which I have to use a different guitar, and he has like technicians to literally rewire his amp, to get the exact right sound, and he has to have the exact vintage, guitar. And then he has another woman who's literally trying to sew the exact outfit that he wore at the certain performance with this, embroidered dragon on it. And they're looking at photographs and videos to get the exact, there's four things, on the back instead of 3 things. But and she'll bring him there's scenes where she'll bring him the finished thing, and he'll say like, well, yeah, but I was looking at the video and it's not gold, it's silver and gold. So you're gonna have to redo that. And, she's probably spent like, 50 hours sewing that dragon head on the back of this thing. And then he's gonna have to go redo it. And he does the same thing with his other performers. Whoever's the Jimmy or whoever's the Robert Plant in his band has to deal with this, and whoever's the John Bonham, and so on and so forth. So all that stuff I thought was very interesting. I think where I would like to have had a little more is I would have liked to have had a little more of like his family, and they may not have wanted to been involved, but there's a whole sequence where he's going off to LA to keep pursuing this in a different way. And what was happening to them? What were they thinking? Because he has a wife.
Yeah.
You see her, and she seems down. She's on board. She's part of the team, but you really don't see her once he's doing LA stuff. So I really wanted to know more about that. Once again, I don't know what the access was or what their willingness was. So that may just be purely unable to happen. And I would have liked to have heard a little more frank discussion from some of his other bandmates some of the times, because I could tell some of the times they were like, dude, you're just taking this a little too hard. Overall, really interesting. I think it's interesting to think about the idea of wanting to be inspiring by the music you create yourself versus trying to really imitate someone to the nth degree. And like, what does that fulfill? For me, it's like being the best art forger in the world, right? Like, how does that fulfill you? You know what I mean? So it is kind of interesting to think about. Overall, though, I'd say it was an interesting documentary for sure.
Yeah, I wanted a lot more regarding his family. Well, maybe just even a little bit more. Just get his wife's reaction.
A few less performances and a little more of his family, I would have been fine with that. So
yeah, your husband's out in LA for several years. How do you feel about it? Let's get that footage. All right.
Yeah.
You're having problems. How it is struggles in Los Angeles? You're not making $1 million a night playing with Led Zeppelin. What are the struggles of living in Los Angeles?
Fresno or wherever they were at?
Right, or at a Renaissance fair or at a beer fest, or it's nothing wrong with that. But what are the struggles? They do show it a little bit about Mr. Jimmy, but I guess, but I agree with you, Bruce. I end up really enjoying Mr. Jimmy, just as far as the documentary, like Anderson Cowan would say, went down smooth for me. Loved the Zeppelin music. Loved him as a person and the people around him and all those hardworking people, artisans who are just trying to make his life a little bit more pleasurable and easier too. Mr. Jimmy for me is 4 stars. What is your rating on Mr. Jimmy, Bruce?
I'm 3.5. I probably would have been 4 if it was tightened up a little bit more. It would have been 4, and if it had that other stuff in it, it could have been even higher. Like we could have like followed those artisans like when they were alone. I would have liked to have seen those artisans alone. Like, God damn it, I got to re-sew this thing again. There's no dragon head on the pants. Grr. You know, like that would have been cool. Anyway,
so that is Mr. Jimmy. 3.5 for Bruce, 4 for me. It's in theaters on September 1st. Also in theaters on September 1st is this Hilary Swank film called The Good Mother. She plays, is she a good mother? Well, you're going to get to see by the end of this film.
Hey, Mom. There's something I want to tell you in person. I love you so much.
Someone killed my son. I need to.
You gotta leave, but I don't think that's what you should be thinking about right now, Mom.
I love Michael, and I'm sad he's gone. I'm pregnant.
I'm here to help, but you need to talk to other people in your situation.
You are my best writer. Right.
You know I didn't make him a junkie.
No, I don't know that. Is he still dealing?
That's the thing, he had stopped. Somebody called him that night. He left all freaked out. And then bam.
Who's that?
That's about $50,000 worth of dirty heroin.
I want you to talk to me on the record.
You remember Mike's friend Ducky?
We think him and Michael might have been in business together.
Selling heroin cut with fentanyl.
Stuff called mother's milk.
Mike was killed up the block from one of Ducky's stash houses.
Ducky killed Michael.
I know he would not do this.
And who killed him?
You saw what happened?
You feeling okay, Mom?
No. Not really.
You followed him? He could have killed you. You saw the person who broke in?
Doesn't make any sense.
We got a lead.
A what?
We got a lead. Helping and healing is actually what you want. You really need to see it for what it is.
Don't I get to know who killed my son?
I assume you know the implications of this.
I know more than anyone. What's the last chance on Kate? Mother knows best.
The Good Mother centers on a journalist played by Hilary Swank, and she gets the horrible, tragic news that her youngest son has been murdered during the dead of night, and she is out to find who killed her son. The problem is, even though she is a journalist and she knows how to report and get the facts and investigate, she's also an alcoholic. She's also not getting along with the people in the newspaper, her colleagues. So she's a little bit of an outlier, outsider within her work. She's an alcoholic. Good news is her son, played by Jack Reynor, her eldest son, is a police officer. So with the help of her son, she might find out what happened to her youngest son. Now, Jack Reynor, we love Jack Reynor. He's a very good actor. He plays the eldest son. I don't know who the youngest son was. You really don't know because you don't get to see his face in the movie. But also starring in this film is Olivia Cooke from Me and Earl and the Dying Girl. She's great in this. I think she's also in House of Dragons on HBO Max or on the Max. And she plays the girlfriend of the late son. And like the son, it's not a spoiler, the son was addicted to drugs and he was trying to get off of it. And I think he was maybe drug-free for a while. And she's also was once drug addicted too. And she's trying to get on the mend as well. She has a fractured relationship with Hilary Swank's character, but eventually both of them join up and team up to find out what happened to her son. And that is a premise of The Good Mother. Let's start with you, Eric Holmes. Your thoughts on this film. Did it work for you?
As a thriller, yes. When it starts delving into this is the problem with drug addiction, I think, and I don't know this for a fact, but I get the sense that the writer or the director, all they know about drug addiction is what they've seen in movies, because it just kind of repeats that, and it's kind of, and there's scenes where they try to lean in and make it like a really dramatic or like be really pointed about drug addiction, and none of it comes off as legitimate. It just comes off as movie tropes when they do it in here. That aside, as a thriller, it's pretty decent. I kind of feel about this what Bruce felt about Nandor. Like it's just kind of like that. There's bits of it I like, but it just wasn't. The parts that bugged me a lot, and the parts that I liked was a little too little, too late. The acting notwithstanding, like Jack Raynor's good, Hilary Swank, like all the acting, all that stuff. The movie, actually, the movie was kind of dark, not in tone, but just in visually dark. And yeah, it was. Could have watched To Catch a Killer again, but I had to watch this instead.
Bruce, do you agree with Eric's assessment of the Good Mother?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty much in agreement with him too. I like all the performers. I like that it has a much more serious approach than I thought it was going to have. I thought this might be a little more like a little more campy or over the top, and it wasn't. It was trying to play it pretty straight. I think where it fails for me is as a mystery. Because I think at its heart, it's a mystery. Like so it's kind of doing two things, right? It's trying to be this drama kind of between mother and daughter, de facto daughter-in-law, right? She's not, but she's kind of de facto daughter-in-law, and kind of how they have to come to work together, even though they don't really like each other at the beginning, to solve this mystery. I kind of like that the relationship stuff between the two of them was kind of interesting to watch them kind of interact, and they're great actors, both of them. So that part was great. But the mystery itself, I thought was kind of obvious. Like I definitely knew who was doing bad things pretty early, and it turned out to be true. And then we're not going to talk about it, but the way it turns at the end, I thought, I absolutely do not understand the ending of this movie. I mean, it makes absolutely no sense to me why certain characters do certain things at the end of this movie. I think it's boneheaded, or if it's on purpose, I don't know what that's trying to tell us about the people in the movie. It doesn't make any sense who we're supposed to, side with. So that alone knocked it down for me quite a bit. So for me, it's just kind of a interesting parts that don't add up.
Yeah, the ending for me, I thought it has two alternate endings without giving too much away. But it remains a little bit ambiguous regarding what's going to happen next. I think the director, Miles Joris Perfit, I believe, is just trying to engage us as viewers to figure out what's going to happen next. And I did not like that ending whatsoever. I could understand it, but that ending knocked this movie down for me as well. But I think I ended up liking it a little bit more than Bruce and Eric. Final thoughts from The Good Mother regarding before we get to ratings, guys? Bruce, Eric, you guys.
I just looked up Olivia Cooke. I did not know from Sound of Metal.
Yeah,
and she was the
girlfriend.
junkie's girlfriend.
Yeah,
I had no idea that was the same person.
Yeah, she's
Holy
very
crap.
She's very good, and she was in Bates Motel.
That may have bumped it up half a star for that alone.
Star, okay.
But overall, this is not a movie. I think I like. Oddly enough, I think I like the first half of this movie more than, or like the first 20 minutes than I like the rest of it. Because normally, like the first 20 minutes, the part you skip over, and then the rest of the movie's the movie. This is a deal where the first 20 minutes I was really getting into, and then just kind of fell off as it went along. I don't. In fact, you were talking about the ending. I don't even remember how it ends. You'd have to tell me to jog the memory, but.
Oh yeah, it's a very interesting ending. I'll definitely jog your memory on that. And The Good Mother, yeah, in theaters September 1st. My rating for it is 3.5 stars. It could have been a 4 if it ended better. My gosh. What is your rating, Bruce?
I'll go 2.5. I liked some of it, but not enough to go over the recommend side.
Oh, okay. So 2.5 for Bruce Purkey, 3.5 for me. Eric Holmes?
I will go 2.5 as well. I was going to go 2, but yeah, we already talked it, bumped up half star.
Okay, so 2.5 for both Bruce and Eric for The Good Mother. I'm giving it 3.5. I'm the only one who's actually giving it a solid recommend. But again, yeah, that ending, that's pretty much a doozy. Running it, hey, only 89 minutes, not such a bad thing. Before we go, we have What's in the Bleeping Box. And you know what, Peter Beta, the reason why I'm doing this is, Bruce Purkey, he likes watching movies in the box. And we also like playing the musical stylings of Peter Beta. What does Peter Beta do and his middle film crew do every week? Bruce Purkey, what do they do?
He softly caresses the box so it opens up and goes forth with something beautiful for us to watch.
Remove your hand from the box, and you die.
What's in the box?
Pain.
All right. Thank you so much, Pete, for that music, and Bruce Purkey for those ASMR stylings. Bruce Purkey, what's in the box right now? What did you watch?
Kid Detective, which I don't think I wrote down who specifically suggested this, but I know Peter Beta was quite a champion of this movie, so probably I first heard about it because of him. Directed by Evan Morgan. I didn't write down the year on this. I want to say it's 2020, 2019.
2020.
Good. Thank you. Stars Adam Brody as Abe, who is the Kid Detective, and a few other people. I'm not going to list them all. You can look it up. Look at IMDb. You'll figure it out. Anyway, this is quite an interesting movie, and we talk about tone. This is a movie where I think the changes in tone are really well handled, but I could see some people having problems with it depending on how it plays for them. The basic concept is this. The Adam Brody character is now an adult, a young adult. He's like late 20s, early 30s. I don't know how old he is. Kind of still hanging on to his kid detective lifestyle. But he was, at one point, kind of one of these, like you'd think of, like a Hardy Boy or what are the Encyclopedia Brown or something, right?
Yeah,
he was the kid that was precocious, and all the people would come to him and say like, oh, we can't figure out who stole the candy money from the school. And, he'd be like, I know who it is. I'd solve it. And they have a whole little flashback sequence where they show him solving all these clues. But there's little hints that they don't always work out quite right for him. Like one kid comes to him and says, it's like, I want to figure out why there's blood on my dad's car. And like in the middle of this sequence, and you see the flash immediately of the police taking his dad out. And you're like, oh, I guess they don't all play out like nice and wholesomely. Anyway, you kind of go through this whole little montage. And then you find out that about the time he was just becoming well known around the community and well loved for all of these things that he solved, all these little mysteries, a young woman has been kidnapped from the community. And because she was his, quote, secretary, she was like 14 or 12 or something, and he was like, I don't know, 15, everyone figured like, well, he's going to solve this immediately. And he never did. And now he's an adult, and, it's kind of haunted him that this girl was abducted and presumably killed and lost. and never solved. And it's been kind of this darkness upon him. And he's drunk now. He's kind of living as a 30 whatever year old he is, like living with a roommate. He kind of still has a detective office, but rarely anyone shows up. He's got his goth secretary who doesn't even want to talk to him. And, all he's getting is like, find my missing cat once in a while, stuff like that. And he's kind of a loser. That's the kind of way he's presented as. And he feels like he's a loser. And a young woman shows up and she says, my boyfriend was murdered and I want you to solve it. And so begins an actual mystery, an actual chance for him to, I guess, be what he, live out his potential, right? This is quite an interesting movie because I would say for the first half of it, I thought, well, this is kind of this lighthearted mystery, sort of neo-noir. Yeah, neo-noir, but very lighthearted. There's a lot of subtle humor in there. I thought for the first half, I thought, wow, this movie's going to be kind of like a Big Lebowski for me, right? Like the first time around, you're like focused on the mystery, but it doesn't really matter. But the second time around, you can really enjoy all these interesting interactions that you get with various people as he's trying to solve the mystery. And he's also kind of interacting with people from his past who dismiss him as an adult. But boy, oh boy, does the last third of this movie kick it up a notch. And the mystery does end up mattering. And the way this plays out is fantastic. And it really, and once again, I'm obviously not going to give it away. This is one of those movies where it's really an interesting trick because usually the mystery has you hooked and you want to get the solution and it either satisfies you or not. But it's kind of rare to have a movie where the mystery isn't really interesting to you until it is interesting to you. And when it is solved, it actually makes everything you saw before more interesting. And that is a very, very cool trick, I think. And I think this movie pulls it off in spades. And by the end of this movie, you're like kind of blown away of like, wow, that was quite a movie. And it's not all, it's not bright and happy like the beginning. And there's some real darkness in this movie. And there's some really real emotional stakes in the journey for the character too. I kind of ended up loving this movie.
Yeah, this is directed and written by Evan Morgan, and I was blown away. I haven't seen it for about a couple of years. It was released in 2020. Thank you for that, Eric Holmes. But it's one of these things. I feel that it's one of those, right, Bruce? Hidden gems still? It continues to be a hidden gem, possibly?
Yes, because I think it's one of those movies that you can't tell from reading a synopsis or looking at it kind of what it is. And I could imagine a lot of people like me, like you, watching the beginning of it and kind of just maybe not finishing it, or maybe just thinking like, oh, I kind of know what kind of the movie this is, and you don't. So yeah.
Okay, I definitely want to actually rewatch this movie. It threw me sideways too with the third act, what was going on.
Third act is amazing.
For you, Eric, I think you'd love it too because it's really well written. A lot of things
really well written.
Yeah, it is. So, what is your rating on The Kid Detective?
I'm 4.5 stars. I could probably go 5 stars on this pretty easily. I definitely want to get a rewatch to this in the next couple of years, and I bet you it'll go up for me because this seems very tight, very well written, and I feel like this is one of those movies. If you watch it again, it would have a really interesting rewatch because it's one of those context movies like The Sixth Sense or something. Like once you know everything, you can watch it again, and I bet you there's a lot of little details and things in there that really add up. Also, I want to say we talked about. I'm not going to say it, what we talked about MacGruber in ours, but we talked about paying off jokes in MacGruber in our Patreon. This one really pays off things that are left earlier in the movie. So, for example, and I'll stop after this, there's a whole thing about when he's a kid, he'd have to hide in closets when he'd break into a house to like solve a mystery, and they'd find him and be like, oh, isn't that cute? This little kid detective is hidden in our closet. They definitely pay that off in a really great way in the modern times. So...
All right, so that is The Kid Detective. That is what's in the box. Before we go, what's in the bleeping box, Bruce? Are you going to actually pick something out?
Yes. Well, actually, I'm going to swerve on this slightly. I'm going to kind of pick something out. A few weeks ago, or maybe about a month ago, Peter Beta reviewed a movie, and so I thought this is a good tie-in. He reviewed a movie on their middle class film class, and I've never heard of the word movie Memoria. Memoria was kind of this notorious movie about a year or two ago where it was supposedly never going to get released on physical media. And it was only being released like a theater at a time. So for like a year and a half, it would just be like, hey, Memoria is playing this week at this theater in Alabama. And the next week it's at this theater in Tennessee. And at next week, and it would just make this tour. And it stars, I want to say it's Tilda Swinton. And it was basically going to be this kind of like, there's that, supposedly that one Wu-Tang album. There was only one made, and it was bought by that terrible guy, and no one would ever get to hear it except whoever bought it for $1 million. Well, this is kind of like the movie. If you didn't see it in the theater, you're not going to be able to see it. Well, apparently that wasn't true, because now it's on Blu-ray. Somehow Peter Beta got it. He said it's horrible. He said it was one of the worst experiences he ever had. And he said, whoever wants it, I'll send you the disc. So I was the first to say I wanted it. So he sent me the disc. So I will watch Memoria for next week. So I may not be suggesting this is a good movie, but I will be watching it. I don't have even a cover or anything. He must have kept the cover. I don't know what the deal is, but I have the disc.
Well, he loves those slip covers.
Yeah, he's
very good, Eric Holmes.
He's like a Scrooge McDuck. Like surfing on all those blue gold coins. He's out there just laying naked in all those slip covers, just basking in them.
Let them wash over me.
Thank you, Peter Beta, for that Memoria. That's next week's What's in the Box. And remember, next week, we're also, along with our CinemAddicts episode, we are doing a special Patreon bonus episode for Kristen, and who wanted us to actually review a couple of Christian Petzold films. That is Undine, and also, have you done the rewatches yet? Eric Holmes, Undine, and what was the other one? Oh, Undine and Transit. Yes. And yes. I don't know if you've already seen Transit yet, Eric Holmes, but Transit is available.
Yeah. I watched both of them.
Oh, okay. So very good on that. We'll be covering that for our Patreon members. And anything else you want to say before we get out of here, Eric Holmes? Anything else coming out this week? Let's
see. This week we got What Doesn't Float, Ernest and Celestine, A Trip to Gibberida, All Fun and Games, Nando and Fodor. We talked about Day and a Half, King of Killers.
Did you see King of Killers? Did you ever see that?
No, I think we have. If we have that, I might cover that. I might cover that next week. Okay. We'll see. I don't know for sure if I have that. Oh, and Bottoms. A lot of people have been watching Bottoms. I think that's. I think I mentioned it is coming soon last week, and it seems to be one of those that's people are liking a lot more than they thought they would. Yeah, and of course the Threequalizer.
The Threequalizer.
Who doesn't want to watch that?
The Threequalizer, very good, Eric Holmes. And of course, lest we forget, Our Father the Devil is playing in Los Angeles. We will continue our Father the Devil. Watch that movie, Our Father the Devil campaign on a weekly basis for CinemAddicts. So are you guys going to outvote me on that recommendation on a given week, Bruce Purkey?
I never saw it, so I don't know.
Our Father the Devil? What?
No, I never watched it.
Wait, what was it called? Our Mother the Devil? Our Father, you remember?
I never watched it.
You never saw?
No.
You never watched Our Father? What was it called?
Was that just me and you last week? Or is Bruce having an Eric moment?
I think
No, I definitely never watched it. Okay. I never watched it.
Okay. All right. Final thoughts before we go. Bruce Purkey. Remember the one who was a fugitive, and she was in she had the thing with the priest and what? Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Final thoughts from Bruce Purkey.
Well, I never watched Our Father the Devil, but I think we are three little devils. Little devils.
3 little devils. Okay. Final thoughts from Bruce Purkey.
I just gave it to you. I'm through 3 little devils.
3 little devils. Okay. We'll see you guys next week here on CinemAddicts. What was the movie? It's called Our Father the Devil, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
With Nick Cage?
No, remember the black woman, and then the father comes in, and then remember.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I guess it was like Our Father the Devil.
Get out of here, Bruce.
All right. That was recording. Leave this part in.
Okay,
we'll say I definitely have donkey brains.
Okay,
wait, listen. Bruce's last thing. Okay, we'll leave this on here. Bruce's last thing to say is he does have donkey brains too.
See you guys next week.
This is CinemAddicts.